是他的伊蒙拉的 brolipa
Yameilo Iramnaobing. I'm so delighted I can connect with you through the internet. Let me start by asking you this simple question. What has COVID-19 done to your vision? What has COVID-19 done to your vision? Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, oh dear, I'm gonna need new glasses. I mean, all those long and endless hours in front of the screen, looking at my phone, in front of my computer, checking email messages, replying to texts, watching videos, engaging in Zoom calls. I mean, all that screen time has put quite a toll on my eyesight. But I believe not only did COVID-19 put a strain on our physical eyesight, it may have also affected our spiritual eyesight. Over the past few months, I've talked to many people, and it seems like they fall into one of three categories. And as I describe these three categories, I want you to ask yourself, which group do I belong to? Ready? All right, the first group are those who are spiritually nearsighted. These are individuals who only see and focus on the here and now. And as a result, whenever they come across a bad news, they react anxiously, they panic, they begin to ask themselves, will I ever survive COVID? Am I going to run out of money? Will I catch the disease? If so, will I ever recover? Am I going to get vaccinated? Will my kids ever go back to school? Am I going to lose my job? Are we ever going to go back to the old way of doing church? And by the way, many of the doubters of Christ and the enemies of God are often spiritually nearsighted. They only focus on the here and now. And as a result, they overlook the presence of the Messiah, who could very well be standing in the midst. And quite frankly, the last 18 months have been very tragic for those who are spiritually nearsighted, as we get hit with one bad news, one after another. Then there's the second group. I call these individuals the spiritually farsighted. Now, these are individuals who are so fed up with the here and now that they just want to die and be with Jesus. They cast their eyes only in eternity. The problem with that is, as a result, they totally forget their earthly responsibilities. They also abandon their loved ones, including the kids and the people at home. They neglect the responsibilities that God has given them while they're here on earth. And sadly, a lot of elders and more senior people end up being very spiritually farsighted as a result of this pandemic. The third group are those who I would describe as spiritually God-sighted. These are individuals who can live confidently and purposefully in the here and now, even right in the middle of a crisis. How? Because in both good times and bad times, they can see God, our Emmanuel, working powerfully in the midst. Now, there are many good examples of people in the Bible who are spiritually God-sighted, but the favorite one for me is the prophet Elijah. In 2 Kings 6, we read about a story that clearly shows Elisha as someone who is spiritually God-sighted. At the time, the Arameans and the people of Israel were in conflict with one another. And in chapter 6, we read about the king of Aram sending his troops to this city called Dothan and surrounded the place with the desire to capture and perhaps kill Elisha. In chapter 6, verse 15 and 17, it reads, "When the servant of the man of God," this is the servant of Elijah, "when he got up early in the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. 'Oh, sir, what will we do now?' the young man cried to Elijah. 'Don't be afraid,' Elisha told him, 'for there are more on our side than on theirs.' Then Elijah prayed, 'O Lord, open his eyes and let him see.' The Lord opened the young man's eye, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. You see, in this story, we see Elisha clearly in the midst of a huge crisis, one that doesn't seem to have a way out. And yet, unlike his servant, he was not in this state of panic. Instead, he was calm, even undisturbed. Why? Because Elisha not only saw the crisis, but he was also able to see God working in that crisis, right there in the midst. He could see clearly that God has sent his army and his horses to guard them, to protect them. And not only that, Elisha even prayed for his servant so that his servant can see what was happening and not just focus on the crisis, but also be able to see the presence of God right in the midst. You see, Elijah was someone who was clearly God-sighted. He could see God working powerfully in the midst. And as a result, he was not anxious or helpless. So what can we learn from this passage? What is our key takeaway from this beautiful story? Well, for me, I think it's a beautiful reminder that for us to find peace, we must focus on Christ amidst our crisis. Let me say that again. We must focus on Christ amidst our crisis. Indeed, crisis is real. We have lived through 18 months of pandemic, so all of us know crisis is real. But just as crisis is real, Christ's presence in the midst of all our crisis is also real. So for us to move forward, if we want to find peace, we must focus on Christ amidst our crisis. And I think if we all look back at the past 18 months, we can all recall times when we see the presence of Christ right in the midst. I believe his presence is evident in the way he used this pandemic to cause everyone to pause and think about not just the physical things, which we know now is so temporary, but to consider the more spiritual things, the things that are more eternal rather than temporal. His presence is real in the way he opened up new opportunities for us to do ministry, to reach out to even broader audience using the internet. His presence is evident in the way he used the lockdown to bring people of the same family closer together. That was certainly the case for my family as we learn about each other in deeper ways. His presence is evident in the way he used his eternal words to comfort us, to encourage us, to help us get through all those rainy days. And also, his presence is real in the way he healed the infected, in the way he rescued those who we thought were not going to make it. Now I can go on and on and on, but I think you get the message. So my prayer for you is simply this. As you move ahead, as you look into the future, I hope you will wake up each day and utter the prayers of Elisha. And the prayer is this: Lord, open our eyes so that we may see you. Lord, open up my eyes that I may see you. Now, more likely than not, we're going to see even more surprises. The crisis may linger on for months, if not years. So my hope is, as we move forward, as you get up each morning, remember 2 Kings chapter 6 and utter the words of Elijah. Lord, open up my eyes so I may see you.